Happy New Year, April Fools. It's Easter and Passover and a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah, they're actually all quite related, to be honest with you. And I was sitting around thinking, how is that actually working? So I did a little researching into the holidays themselves, and holidays and holy days, same thing, right? But now, what's interesting to note is that New Year's Day is actually a pre-calendar holiday. It's been around long before they actually put a calendar together and wrote down, hey, this is New Year's Day. And it was celebrated because when we went to an agrarian culture as a human species, the year became the time from when you plant until you harvest. So at the time of planting, that was the new year. And so that's when New Year began to be celebrated. And it stayed that way for quite a long time. In fact, the Babylonians, the first to really have any record of a big time celebration for New Year's, they actually celebrated New Year's for 11 days. Big festival, party, great time. 11-day festival. That's how they rolled. And that stuck around for quite a while. The Romans stayed with that for quite a while. They had New Year's Day. They celebrated New Year's Day actually on March 25th. And, the Caesars, the emperors, were truly emperors. So they bounced around depending on how they felt where New Year's Day was going to be. It moved back and forth, and they were very much into commerce, of course. So it made it really rough on the businessmen to not know when New Year's was going to be. It was always at the whim of the emperor. And so the Senate decided at 153 BCE, before the Common Era, the Senate of Rome decided that we will have New Year's Day on January 1st. Why not? We've got this god Janus, and the Janus god, you know that one? He's got two faces, one looking this direction, one looking in that direction. So they thought that god was a perfect time, a perfect segue for New Year's to be calendared. So that's when they put it on their Julian calendar, and that became New Year's Day. Now, still, the emperors kind of messed around with it. At one point, Julius Caesar added a couple of days and backed up a couple of days, and that year ended up being 445 days before he finally got it together. But eventually, they settled on having New Year's Day on January 1st. And that stuck around for quite a while. The Romans had a lot of influence, as we know. And so as a result of that, most of Europe celebrated New Year's Day on April 1st. On January 1st. Except the French. No one told the French about this. The French really liked the idea of the party around the spring season. So they had their own party on March 25th, and they partied for 7 days, meaning their party ended on April 1st, with a big celebration in the streets all over France. And so that was their big deal. That's what they did for the longest. And as a result of that, there was some challenges going on, you see, because the Roman rule was all across Europe. And here's this King Charles who is allowing this holiday to happen on the 25th of March. And his mother, now King Charles, I don't know if you know this, but King Charles the 8th, I think he was. King Charles the 8th was 10 years old when he became the King of France. So the Senate of France, the middle rulers of France decided, this might not be a great idea to have a 10-year-old king. Let's let his mother kind of be the governor for a while until he gets a little bit older. Now she was a hardcore Catholic. So the idea of going against the Roman Church really bothered her. So she said, we're going to celebrate New Year's Day on January 1st. Didn't go over very well. People still celebrated on the 25th. And those that celebrated on the 25th, ending on the holiday of the 1st with the big party, became known as fools because they weren't celebrating when it was supposed to be on January 1st. Thus, we get the holiday April Fools, right? Yeah. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Now you know. It's not all those other things. It's the French were just like, we go party wherever we want to. Y'all are foolish. Now, remember, this whole started out around planting. This whole thing started out around planting, agrarian culture and everything like that. And so now we get into how this shifts and relates. We got New Year's and April Fools. Now here's where Easter comes into the story. Easter, the Scottish had a god, a spring god. Do you know her name? Say it again. Something like that. Yeah. I haven't figured out how to say it exactly right. It's Easter, except they spell it Estra. They had the E and the R reversed, so it's E-S-A-E-A-S-T-R-E, was the Scottish spring goddess, and they would celebrate this goddess at this time of year. And so but with the Roman Catholic rule going on, that became a bit of a problem because, you see, if you weren't following the rules of the Roman Church, they had a very interesting way of dealing with you. But they really wanted to stay in charge. They wanted to rule, and they wanted actually people to understand how great this thing called Catholicism, the universal church, was. And if you liked it and you were good with it, maybe you might tell somebody else and they might convert. So rather than go around killing people who were not celebrating New Year's Day on New Year's Day and were celebrating the spring pagan holiday, they decided they would kind of shift things a little bit. And so they shifted it just enough so that and added a little bit of the church in there so that the Easter holiday would fall along the same time as the Passover Christ resurrection story. They blended the two together so that when people were partying the spring goddess holiday, they were not quite as obvious because they were also celebrating around the time of Easter. That worked pretty well for a long time. And Easter also, though, it bounced around a lot, you see, until 325 BCE when the Council of Nicaea got together and they decided under Caesar, Constantine, Emperor Constantine, he decided that we need to lock in this Easter holiday. But how do we lock it in where we can still allow people to celebrate this spring thing and not have to go out and kill them, because that's going to make us look really, really bad. So why don't we tie it some kind of way to the spring season? I got an idea. How about the first full moon after the vernal equinox? Boom, there it was. So that's how Easter, see, are you following me here? So Easter is linked, April Fool's Day is linked, New Year's is linked, and it's all linked to Passover because the Easter story is really a Passover story. See, Jesus was a Jew, right? He's walking into Jerusalem, big celebration, big party. Let's have a meal together on this Last Supper meal, which was actually a Seder, a Passover Seder meal, and then a couple days later, there was, well, you know what happened. You didn't know what happened, right? A couple days later. All right. But back to the calendar stuff. Passover created its own challenge for calendaring because, you see, the Jewish people have two kind of calendars, but the one we're going to deal with right now is the lunar calendar. You see, the Jewish people are very communal people. So their community activities are based on the lunar calendar. Their individual activities are based on the astronomical calendar. That's where you get let's leave that for later. But for now, let's just stick with this lunar problem. The problem with the lunar calendar is it's based on 28 or 29 days. Well, when you add that up together, you end up with 354 days. There's a problem there. That's not a year, astronomically speaking. So what the Rabbinical Council decided to do was to just every couple of years add another month. That's easy. Now it gets corrected. Because if they didn't add another month, all of a sudden, Passover would start happening in summer or winter or fall. And it's hard to have a seasonal activity where you're celebrating planting and harvesting in the middle of winter. So by adding this extra month, they were able to keep it together because the Rabbinical Council said, guard the month of spring to make for the Passover offering. And thus we have linked now all of these holidays to springtime. Absolutely amazing. So there you got 4 holidays in one. Okay, make that 5. Because now there's Sri Hanuman Jayanti, which is a Hindu holiday. Now, I don't know why they celebrate that in spring. Maybe it's because this god is into changing form and changing shape, and in the springtime you plant something in the ground and it changes form, it changes shape, and it definitely has to be strong to do that because this god has a lot of grit and a lot of physical strength, and it's very intent, strong sense of consciousness and deep, deep compassion. And all of that comes together, and then you add our anniversary and a birthday, you got a lot of new things happening this time of year. Whew, I think that's enough for a talk. Let's go have fellowship. No. So there you get that. Now, here's where it gets really crazy. I'm contemplating this stuff all week. I've got so much stuff in my head around these holidays that next year, I think I'm just going to do a whole series through the whole month of March and April to decipher all of this stuff. Because there's actually more. I mean, I can see on your faces, you're all going like, Right? And I felt like that all week long. And so to get through it, I listened to music. And one of the soundtracks that I love soundtracks. And one of the soundtracks I'm really loving right now is The Greatest Showman. Right? It's awesome. It's an awesome soundtrack. So I'm listening to this soundtrack, and it reminded me of the movie that I enjoyed so much. So I thought, hey, I wonder if they have any clips of the movie. So I went to YouTube. They didn't have any clips of the movie, but they did have the trailer, which I watched again. And when I watched the trailer, I was like, oh my God, that is the Easter Passover story in a movie. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, maybe you should see the trailer. Wait, first off, who has not seen this movie? Really? Oh my God. This is so challenging for me because you see, I really, 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 really do not like to know about a movie before I go to see it. When I was sitting on the set and David Sheehan would be doing the movie reviews, he would always tell the whole story. So we sat next to each other when he was doing his reviews because I was right after him, so I couldn't be off the set during that time. And I would sit there the whole time going, and he would just go, would you stop that? I don't want you to tell me the movie. So I will do my best to not spoil the movie for you. And I didn't make the trailer, so the trailer shouldn't spoil the movie for you, but I think it will still work to talk about the Easter Passover story, even though 80% of you have not seen this movie. How can I change my talk? Is it based off the play Barnum? I have no idea. I never saw the play Barnum. Okay, enough of that. There's my backstory. We got it all covered. I hope I'm not going to spoil the movie for you. The trailer comes now.
Can I have your attention? You're all dismissed.
Bankrupt.
Better luck with your next job.
I am not a stranger to the dark.
This is not the life I promised you. Not even close.
'Cause we don't want your broken parts.
Girls, I think I've had an idea.
Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum.
P.T. Barnum, at your service.
To be seen,
I'm putting together a show,
no apologies.
and I need a star. Every one of us is special. And nobody is like anyone else. That's the point of my show. Ready? Showtime.
Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apology. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. Marching to be seen. I make no apology. This is me. I'm gonna stand up, gonna
No one ever made a difference by being like everyone else.
This is me.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Why not?
So,
Clearly have a...
I will stick to the script and try not to reference the movie too much in the process. New Year's, April 1st, Easter, Passover, all of these things, this planting and this growth, it's all about the old becoming the new. It's about endings and beginnings, or beginnings, as we've been taught here in our center. It's about death and resurrection. See, nature has this edict. It's grow, progress, or regress. Grow, progress, or regress. When we stay in our fears, when we stay hidden into the stories that we've adopted, that others have told us, it stops our growth. It stops our progression. We actually regress somewhat. That's the Easter story. When we stay trapped in a particular way of being, when we decide that where we are here is better than any promise that we might have in our minds, to the point where we become comfortable in that situation and do not allow ourselves to be liberated or to be released from that prison. That's the Passover story. That's what happened to the Israelites when they were freed from the Pharaoh's hold. That's what happened to the Christians when they moved out of their fear into living a more full life. That's what happens to a seed when you drop it into the ground and it bursts into the new plant that it's destined to become. Dr. Holmes, in a great book that he shared with Willis Kinnear, wrote, "There is a dynamic principle of growth and development in the universe which continually seeks expression. This time of year is to remind us that that growth principle within us that is seeking to expression is to be let out, is to be released. It's like in the movie, just a minute, here I come." You see, we can look to so much wisdom if we look at nature. Nature is like a blackboard that's just a whiteboard that just shows all the things that we can do if we look at it really carefully. See, through it, we see the resurrection. We see how to bring things alive, how to bring more vigor, how to revive certain things in our lives. But one of the things that gets in the way is that growth equals change, and change requires release. And sometimes we just don't want to let go. I mean, if you look at the story, it wasn't easy for Moses to get the Israelites to come on board and to leave the Pharaoh. And it wasn't easy for the Pharaoh to let go. Why is all of that? Well, the Pharaoh is our consciousness. It's our holding. It's things that we hold on to. And the plagues were all the things that happen when our fears grab onto us and keep us in place, you see. So there had to be a release from that. Dr. Bindle, George Bindle, was a great friend of Dr. Holmes and stayed with him for the latter part of his life. And he wrote this wonderful book called Holy Days and Holidays. And in it he says, "Our concern is not to change life, but to change our awareness of that life. This time of year is a time to remind us to change the awareness we have about the lives that we're leading. Not to necessarily change our lives particularly much, because life is going to unfold the way it's going to unfold. But our relationship to that is what we get to change. Our relationship to that is what we get to open up to. And our relationship is one that begins in that, remember that nature blackboard thing? Let's go back to that for a minute. Before planting, before stepping out into our new experience of life, we have to prepare the soil. You got to put the amendments in there. What is preparing the soil? It's dealing with our consciousness, dealing with our thoughts, dealing with the things that we believe about ourselves, and moving beyond the limiting beliefs that we hold about ourselves. We're called to consider, who is it that we serve? Who is our master? What do we believe about ourselves? P.T. Barnum said it so well in that clip. No one ever made a difference by being like everyone else. We are not to be carbon copies of anybody in the world. We are to look at those self-imposed tombs that are very tangible and very real for many of us. We're slaves to our job. We're beholden to our family or to our family of origin and what they've told us. We're beholden to an image that we hold within our own minds. And if you think about the Easter story and the death and the resurrection, they take Christ and they put him in this tomb. The tomb are all those fears, all those things that we hold dear and hold on to. But the stone gets rolled in there, and that blocks our fears, you see. It blocks us. It keeps us stone, the fears. It holds us back from change. It holds us back from being to have the people in our lives that really uplift our lives, to support us, that hold us back from the experiences that bring us more joy and more happiness, that keep us into the many deaths, the M-I-N-I deaths, and the M-A-N-Y deaths as well. The many deaths that we experience through life, you see. But then that stone gets rolled away. What is that rolling away of the stone? It's the angels. The angels that come to roll the stone away. What are the angels? There are our thoughts, our affirmative thoughts, our positive thoughts, the thoughts that bring us hope, that bring us value, that understand the process that we're going through, and in that understanding offer us wisdom to move beyond the place that we are, to stand in a place of faith. So then we move forward. We move forward beyond our conditioning. That's the Passover story. We move beyond our habits and our fears. That's the Easter story. And it's really interesting to understand that when we move beyond that, we're called to something else that we may not even recognize or even understand on a regular basis. But deep inside, we kind of get it. But when you say it, this might even sit awkwardly with people. But here it is. I was reading about there's a wonderful rabbi at a temple in Pennsylvania who writes a lot. And I was reading this guy because he's one of those cutting edge where, he's truly into the interfaith. And if this is not an interfaith talk, I don't know what is. So in this, Rabbi Michael Knopf says, God did more than free the Israelites from Pharaoh. After freedom, the ultimate goal was God replacing Pharaoh as the people's new master. Interesting concept. It wasn't just to find freedom, but what do you do? This is about what do you do with your freedom? Do you run crazy out there with your freedom? Like my friends Penny's kids who would come to my house because they never got to eat candy and I had a candy bowl at the house. When they got free to be at my house, they just devoured all the candy like in 15 minutes. Is that what you want to do with your freedom? Just devour all your joy in 15 minutes? Or do you want, well, maybe some of you do. Candy is good. But what are we going to do? What are we going to replace instead of the fears and the dangers of the doom, the holding back that we've been done with our lives? What is our new master going to be? And before you rise up and say, I have no master, I control my own destiny, think again. Think again if you don't have a master. Try going out into the wilderness and try to avoid the laws of nature, or try to avoid the laws of just your own body. You can't go out there and not eat. You got to figure out how to eat. You can't go out there all alone. We're social, relational kind of people. So we're going to want to find someone else to be out there with us. You can't beat your internal masters that are running for maybe the creature comforts, asking for the creature comforts. Or maybe there's a desire for power, to be in control. There's definitely an internal desire to be loved, to find forgiveness. Back to Dr. Bendel for a minute. He says, our personal resurrection is a rising from belief in our individual tomb to a concept of richer and courageous living. When we move out of that tomb, when we move into our freedom, when we leave the bondage of Egypt and walk off into the land of milk and honey, how are we going to do that? We're going to need to be courageous. And where do we find our courage? Where do we find the richness of life? We find it in Science of Mind by practicing those two principles, those two pillars, love and law. When we love all that we bring into our lives and we apply the law of the universe to those loves, then our life unfolds in a wonderful way. We move free from limitation. We align with good, with peace, with harmony, and with justice. Our new master that we're called to when we move out of our tomb, when we leave the land of bondage, our new master is our spiritual truth. It's the understanding of who we are at our very core and living in alignment with that truth. And when we can live in alignment with that truth, we don't even mind being under the master of that law. And that brings in our Hindu God for today, Sri Hanuman Jayanti. Think about it. Rich and courageous. Call upon that God, that shape-shifting God, because what we're doing when we move out of these places, we're shape-shifting. We're moving into a higher, a new realm of experience for our lives. So we need grit. We need stamina. We need strength to move into a new space of being, because our habits are going to pull us back and say, no, don't go. And you're going to say, I'm strong. I'm shifting my shape. I'm moving out. I'm going to Hanuman Jayanti you. I'm out of here, you know? We're going to set our intention. We're going to move with strength and vitality. And that's what, see, I haven't talked about the movie much, but that's what's so strong about that movie. This group of people that P.T. Barnum finds are living in their tombs, and he releases them, and something amazing happens to the world. Have you been to a circus? It's because of him. It's great. So what seeds are we going to plant in light of the holiday season that we're in right now? What master are we going to follow? By whose authority will you choose to live? And remember, as we break away from something, we also grab a hold of something. I'm thinking about the playground and those bars that you would swing from and swing from. You let go of this one. No, not the monkey bars, the other ones. The rings, you know. You grab one, you let go, you grab, you let go, you grab, you let go. That's back there, nature again. Nature's the blackboard. Watch kids, they'll tell us how to do it. Let go to grab, let go to grab. You got to do that. We have to release in order to let go. We have to let go in order to grow. So if we go to what I think is one of the central messages behind this time of year, it comes from George Bendel again. The great Easter truth that we seek is not basically that you and I are going to live after death, because we know that God is of the living, not of the dead, right? And everything transforms. Even things that appear to die transform into something else, even if it's just into a memory. Not going to live after death. The teaching, rather, is that we are going to be new here and now. That's what happens in the release. That's what happens when we leave the tomb, when we leave the land of bondage, when we rise up, you know, because we're so hooked into what the Israelites were the people of Jerusalem were so hooked into what they were accustomed to, that when they had a chance to give Jesus his freedom, they gave a thief freedom so that he would die. I mean, that's when the promise is right there in front of us. Our habits are so strong that we would rather stick with the crook than stick with the good. It takes strength. And the strength that we're looking for is to be new right here and right now. And so it is. So, all right. Let's do our affirmation together, shall we? Here we go. I begin anew, knowing as I make an intentional choice, the Christ consciousness within me rises up, guiding me to the right and perfect outcome. Yes. Wow. I could have gone on for like another 45 minutes. So, I mean, I'm sitting here stopped, and my brain has not stopped. And then you wanted to say, and and that usually doesn't happen. That's just very interesting. Interesting day. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. All right. It's good to see so many of you. You guys look so good. If you could see what I would see, you'd be like, to everybody. You're welcome. Hi, Joyce. So this is our time for prayer. And, wow, I'm looking at and I'm seeing a lot of really lovely, comfortable, feeling good folk. And even in that, if gratitude is what we want to express, then gratitude is definitely a lovely prayer. As Meister Eckhart said, if that's the only prayer ever say thank you, you prayed enough. And also I know that sometimes the outside looks all wonderful. The inside is like, if you're having a inside and you're looking to get out of the tomb, move out of the land of bondage, this is the time to do it in prayer together. If there's someone that you know that's moving through a resurrection experience and trying to move into a new, pass over some of the pain of their life, this is the time to speak that word. If you know someone that needs a little more strength, a little more grit, or maybe just to celebrate and be a fool for the day, this is the time to bring that person into the room as we do our shared prayer together. So I just open the room for a prayer call. Yes. The presence of the divine is so palpable in this moment, to feel the spirit of each and every person in this room collectively understanding that we are one in the life that is God, that we are one in the love that is the expression of God, that we are one in the operation of the universe that performs through the law of God. We simply allow ourselves to settle into that moment of deep truth and full understanding. That the word that we speak has power because there is intention behind it. The intention comes from feeling and belief, and the belief and the feeling generate faith. And so with all that combined, we can speak this word of truth for all the names that have been spoken in this prayer time together. For all those that are looking for a resolution of brokenheartedness. They're trying to rise above moments of grief or sadness. That are standing in the expectation and the joy of new experiences. That are finding a place in their hearts for forgiveness, expansion of love, a return of harmony. that are standing in the possibilities of that limitless abundance that brings more than the previous month had brought before, to simply know that I am well cared for, that I experience the fruits and the gifts of the kingdom, that I have a daily harvest of good, like the manna that fell from heaven. Each day I am taken care of, for I live in the life that is God. For all this truth and for this acknowledgement that we share together and for the conviction we hold in our hearts, I say thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Divine Presence. Thank you, Infinite Spirit, for the good that you are in our lives. And in this moment of deep contemplation, I take a breath. And with deep gratitude, I release this prayer to the law, knowing the word is heard and does not return unto us void. And so it is.